That's right, folks. Coming up on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, we discuss the top 5 My Guy running backs for 2023. Before we do, we're super excited to announce that we now have our 2023 projections tools are live. Go to razzball.com or hit the link in this description. Go check out our 3-day free trial. Check out all the great projected snap counts, target counts, you name it. We got it over on razzball.com, so go check it out today. But today's show, 5 My Guy running backs, starting right now, the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. And Sky, as you can tell, we've been doing must-have running this, that for the last few weeks, and I almost said must-have, but it's my guys today. And my guy is Sky Guasco. Go follow him on Twitter at Sky Guasco. What's going on, Sky?
Yeah, likewise, Bob. Back at you, buddy. I'm really excited for this. This is the kind of the creme de la creme, man. This is the flag plant episode for running backs. These are our top guys. And just my quick what makes a my guy. A my guy is someone we're going to stand behind no matter what their circumstance is. I got a player on here that I think a lot of people are fading for a particular circumstance we'll get into, but still, he's my guy. I think once he's able to get going 100%, he will be worth that draft capital. So I'm excited about that. So really excited to get into these guys. And then once you have this list, you can start targeting these players during your drafts coming up in the next week or two. And Bob, all of a sudden, let me check my calendar here. We're 2 weeks away from official, legit, actually counts football. Very excited, my man.
No, forget about regular football. It's fantasy draft season. What's better, Christmas or fantasy draft season? Fantasy draft season.
Well, obviously fantasy drafts. Yeah, fantasy draft season because it's 7 months long. Yeah, not even a question.
Love it. This is like hot. This is it, baby. Preseason is officially over now, and I like how they kind of give that 2-week gap to where it's like now you know that you could do your drafts for the next 2 weeks, essentially. There's no more preseason games. You can get all the good drafts. And this like really is fantasy draft season. And so I'm super excited for that. But before we get into our My Guy running backs today's episode, make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. We'll be breaking down each position all week long for our My Guys, our flag plants, whatever you want to call it. That's what this week is all about. But Sky, before we get into our My Guy running backs for this episode, who are some of the honorable mentions that just missed the cut?
Yeah, it's a great question. I try to think I try not to go too high, right? I don't want to get guys too high that everybody talks about. So I'm going to kick it down a little bit. For some reason, nobody's talking about Alexander Mattison in a positive. I'm not sure why. I get it. He's not Dalvin Cook, whatever. But in 3 games that he was Dalvin Cook, he did have over 20 PPR fantasy points, and we would love to have that. Do I expect it every week? Probably not. But he's in a high-power offense, focal part of that offense. Love Alexander Mattison. You're getting him at a discount right now. Another guy I haven't heard a peep from all year because it's all about Kelsey. It's all about Mahomes, rightfully so. Nobody talks about Isiah Pacheco. He's in my top 24 right now. He runs super hard. He's a beast. He does have touchdown upside, and he can break a long run. Now, the Chiefs are not run-focused, obviously, but they use him out of the backfield. And as a 49er fan for a very long time, I don't trust longevity and health with Jerick McKinnon. I know he's the hot name, and he blew up in the playoffs last year. I get it. But Isiah Pacheco is another 2.5 down back that I don't think people are paying much attention to. And some deeper names, I got to throw another shout out to my boy Khalil Herbert. I've been burned 2 years in a row. I think he becomes the Bears starter right off the bat, and he remains the Bears starter at minimum for the first half of the season, and they start chalking in some other guys. But I'm really excited about him. I'm not worried about Foreman. I do think it takes Roschon a little bit to get going as well. So Khalil Herbert is another name that I'm picking up in drafts at a discounted price, in my opinion.
And make sure you leave, everyone who's watching right now, go leave a comment in the live stream, guys. We're live right now on YouTube. And let us know who your My Guys at running back position are this year. And I'm kind of the opposite of Sky. I have to talk about my honorable mentions as these studs. It's Derrick Henry.
I know you do. I know you do.
I'm like, Derrick Henry for me is like, he's now falling into the second round. And like for everybody besides, like, I feel like I'm in my own little bubble. Everybody's second round pick, maybe if he falls to the 2-3 turn. I'm like, this guy averaged like 3 more fantasy points in the RB12 last year and literally lost Ryan Tannehill, 3 of his offensive linemen, Treylon Burks. They had no receivers. They had no quarterback play half the season. They had no linemen, and he still averaged 19.1 PPR points per game. So I just think that for me, I'm still in on Henry. The other one is Tony Pollard. I think this is why we play fantasy football. Like Tony Pollard to me gives me those like those first-year CMC vibes. He was pretty good. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, Jonathan Stewart, see you later. Boom, he explodes. Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon. Hey, man, this is a great 1-2 punch. Oh, bye, Melvin Gordon. Boom. Now Austin Eckler's a stud. I just think Tony Pollard's that guy. He's a locked first-round pick for me, and I love him. And if I want to give a shout-out to one of your boys, Raheem Mostert. Jonathan Taylor, you stay in Indy. Don't get traded. I think Raheem Mostert, if he doesn't get traded, if Taylor doesn't get traded to the Miami Dolphins, I want to give a shout-out. I think Mostert gets off to a nice start, RB2 this season. He's a late round, my guy, for you.
I like
now,
that.
We got some.
Like that.
Of course you do. Of course we do. Oh, the Endorphins coming in telling us Fields running back not loving that target. Oh man, that's he's throwing some shots at you already, Sky. That Khalil Herbert call, but we love you, the Endorphins. It's all good there. We got Chubb and Gibbs, and that is the best segue. This is why I love Jason T and our followers, because he just brought up Gibbs, and guess who's on the list? Jahmyr Gibbs at number 5. I currently am slightly lower than Gibbs myself. But Sky Guasco, you have him as one of my guys at the running back position. So tell us what's up with Gibbs? Why are you planting your flag in 2023?
Yeah, this is a big one, man. This is the guy that I'm ahead of the curve on big time this year, and I'm going for it. Last year it was Joe Mixon. I had him at number 6. Everybody else had him about 13, 14 last year. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs currently running back 12 in PPR. I know it might be steep. They do have David Montgomery over there now, but they're getting rid of 26.5 touches per game from DeAndre Swift, now with the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course my boy Jamal Williams trying to catch them all in New Orleans, right? So you have about 10.5 touches per game from Swift last year, 16 from Williams. Now I do think Swift and Gibbs have a similar set, and I do think Montgomery and Williams have a similar set. So let's give Swift or Gibbs, a modest 10 to 12 touches per game. That right there is not going to keep him in the top 12 discussion. But I do think that he brings more. Also, they drafted him in the first round. Not only did they draft him in the first round, but they drafted him number 12. Once Bijan went at 8, the Lions said, you know what? We need to get our guy right now. The Lions have many holes to fill, maybe to the general public. Dan Campbell said, nope, we need this guy. He's a playmaker. We're getting rid of some other running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs comes in at 12. I also love this. He led Alabama last year as a receiver out of the backfield. 44 catches, 444 receiving yards, and he was third best in all of college football last year in receiving yards. And he led all running backs 2 years ago in running back receptions and yards as well, with 470. So he can catch the ball, obviously. He runs well. We saw a highlight early in the summer where he did a little flare pass, and he absolutely smoked an outside linebacker. I think of early, young Alvin Kamara. I think he could be that kind of guy. I'm expecting a big rookie season from Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't have to draft him as a 12th running back, but I'm excited for him to potentially land there, and I'm getting a discount. He is my guy for the running back position, Jahmyr Gibbs, Detroit Football Lions.
So Gibbs, I actually started off a little bit lower, and I slowly moved him back up. And to be honest with you, what's super funny? I actually have him as RB13. So
nice.
I'm good. Lower than him, but I'm not at all anymore. So it's like I'm actually the ADP ranks. Just like, what do you pick at that spot? Is it a wide receiver, a tight end like Mark Andrews, maybe a quarterback like Josh Allen if they fall? So it is kind of semantics with this kind of position, but I think the Gibbs situation, a lot of people are excited. First thing they talk about is top 12 running backs drafted. And I laugh at that comparison because it assumes that the Art Barkley, who was drafted 2nd overall, and Zeke, who was drafted 4th overall, is closer to 12 than a RB that's drafted at 15, 17, 19, or 20. So I feel like those comps, you need to expand it. If you're going to compare him to the RB, the 2nd overall pick, then you should also compare him to the RB20, the 20th overall pick, meaning. So that's something that for Gibbs right there, I kind of was like, all right, I need to pump the brakes. So I was a little standoffish at first. However, when I started looking into the information, first off, I think the number one comparison because of Dan Campbell is Alvin Kamara. And Alvin Kamara, being the 1B back behind Mark Ingram his rookie season, had an absolutely monster rookie campaign. RB4, 19.7 PPR points per game. However, we got to remember 2 things. One, Drew Brees was the quarterback. Jared Goff, We all like Jared Goff now, but he's not Drew Brees. And the other aspect is Kamara got 100 targets. The role that Gibbs is going to get is probably not 100 target ceiling because of the fact that number 1, Montgomery's there, and number 2, Jared Goff isn't as check down happy as Brees was. But if you just give him a realistic 16, 17 game pace around 80 targets, that Kamara season only drops to 17.2, would have been RB6 that season. So there is top 6 upside for Gibbs, which I like. However, I do feel like he is kind of more in the vein of like, remember DeAndre Swift's rookie season when he shared the backfield with Adrian Peterson? Also, if you want to go further, it's Miles Sanders when he shared with Jordan Howard. Giovanni Bernard is a really fun one from way back in the day when remember Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, the old school, nice. The law firm, you know what I mean?
The law firm, yeah.
Nice. Even Christian McCaffrey's rookie season with Jonathan Stewart, all of those guys kind of had the same points per game, around like 14.5 to about 13, high 13 points per game. Like they were all kind of right there when they shared the backfield with a current veteran on the roster who is, you know, going to get usage. So I think I view him like more as like a top 15 back this year. That's why I got him at 13. I'm actually excited about him now, but I don't think I saw him get taken in the second round of a draft. I'm like, I'm not going to take him over Chris Olave, you know, Devontae Adams type players. I'm not going to take him over Ramondre Stevenson, in my opinion. So that's why I'm not really all in on Gibbs, but I do see the upside now as well. But I do have, go ahead, Sky.
I was just going to say that's fair. I just go a little bit apples to apples, right? And you have a red apple and a green apple if you don't want to go apples to apples completely, right? But both these running backs are new to the system, new to the staff and everything. So David Montgomery comes in with more NFL experience. He's a bigger back, bigger workload, whatever. He's yet to play a full season in the NFL. So we know that mostly all running backs take some time off due to injury or what have you. So take him out for a few games. Maybe Gibbs stays a little more healthy because he's more of that hybrid back per se. But the Lions also are run heavy and effectively passing, meaning they run the ball more than they pass. But when they pass, they're very efficient, running over the middle with Amon-Ra St. Brown and a couple deep shots. But a lot of that goes out to the backfield. So there's about, you know, I know you like to do your vacated targets, vacated touches. There's room for Jahmyr Gibbs to have about 225, 250 touches total. And anybody would want that for their running back, let alone, you know, a top 12 pick in the NFL draft that this coaching staff bought into on a seemingly high-powered offense, potentially in sneaky. So I'm going to go with it, man. I just don't feel like you have to pay the draft capital necessarily in the drafts I'm seeing to get that potential output.
So before we dive into our next player, I want to talk quickly about we got Matt K, one of our new guys. Welcome to the stream, man. We appreciate you for jumping on. We're going to answer your question here. He does talk about Jonathan Taylor. So Sky, if he stays in Indy, what's your thoughts about JT? Where do you currently think you should have him ranked? Round 3, round 4? Which kind of players are you taking over him? What's your thoughts about JT's situation if he stays in Indy?
Yeah, right now is real trouble. I've got him like at RB 22 just because I'm waiting it out. So I'm a bit concerned about that. If he stays in Indy, then I'm still taking him probably behind where he's going to get drafted, probably RB 15 to 18, right? I'm looking at my rankings right now. He'd probably be around like J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Dameon Pierce, right? Probably in that round for me. If he moves, and let's say he moves to Miami, that might be a little bit sketch too, because honestly, we're going to have, you know, so many weapons there, and there's so many opportunities for everybody else. So a little bit concerned about that. To be honest with you, unfortunately, he's already on my bust list. You can find that article for free on razzball.com. And I'm a little bit concerned about Jonathan Taylor overall. So unfortunately, Bob, probably regardless, I'm going to stick away from it this year.
I agree. Mobile quarterback, rookie quarterback, they aren't necessarily bad for running backs, but it does cap the upside in general. We did a study a few weeks ago about that. Go check it out on the stream. Now, I love our followers because they're like helping me out. We have some chatter in here about Cam Akers. Akers killed me last year. Lindorfin. Someone tell me Cam Akers won't ruin my fantasy team for the second year in a row. And guess what? The Lindorfin, this guy right here. Cam Akers, I have right now, rank 47, ADP 64, currently on razzball.com. Now, the first thing with Akers, a lot of people are going to point out is he busted last year. Well, he tore his Achilles in 2021. Like, I think prior to the last few seasons, a torn Achilles has been a death nail for running backs especially, but just players in general. But I think over the last few seasons, we have seen guys after 2 years or so really kind of return to form. Devonta Foreman comes to mind. There hasn't been a lot of guys who tear their Achilles and kind of bounce back quickly. But Cam Akers in 2021 came back at the end of the season that year and just didn't look right. And then all the offseason happened. They were talking up the fact that he was missing practices and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, he doesn't look right to start the year. Okay. Misses some time in the middle of the season. But then you start looking at the last part of last season. So just in 2022, the 8 games played where he saw 40% of snaps, he averaged 67% of the snaps in those games, which I think is a realistic number because I think Karen Williams is going to get some work in the passing game, and I don't think they're going to overwork Cam Akers. So 67% of the snaps probably realistic for him. He averaged 16.1 PPR points per game in those 8 games last year. That was 2022. That's coming off still that ACL injury. That would have been RB9 last year. So the other thing is with most of that was done without Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, because remember, down the stretch, both those guys didn't play. Now you're going to be in better situations. Teams are going to have to respect the pass more, and they're also going to have more scoring opportunities in the red zone with Stafford at the helm. But 2022 wasn't a fluke. Like 2020, if you go prior to the injury, he actually didn't start the season as the starter. If you look at the after week 13, when he was named the starter, the final 6 games of that season, he averaged 16.6 PPR points per game. Like, he did it again. Like, he clearly, when he earns the work, he is a legit workhorse. And you could tell with McVay wants to have a feature run. Look at Todd Gurley, how good he was. Now, I don't think he'll ever get that passing work to be an RB1, but where you're taking Cam Akers right now, I think he's an absolute steal for fantasy football. Scott, what's your thoughts about Cam Akers as my guy for 2023?
Yeah, I love it. I was going to maybe put him on my alternate list, right? We only got about 3 each, so I had to narrow it down. But Cam Akers is absolutely a guy that I've been repping this summer as well. Loved him last year. Obviously got in the doghouse and the rest is history, but I really thought he had an opportunity there as well, man. He just needs to stay healthy. I love when he came out. I loved him in college. And then, of course, he was behind Todd Gurley, as you mentioned. So I think this year he finally gets the trust of McVay. They bring him back. They don't trade him. They don't cut him. It's just, hey, it's your backfield. Maybe he's on a short leash, but it's his backfield and he can get after it. So I like Cam Akers a lot. I don't love the Rams offense, but Cooper Kupp, obviously, and Akers will be the focal point there for the touches. So those 2 guys are the only ones, other than your boy Higbee, maybe is like a 15th round flyer. But other than that, I'm probably going to stay away from the Rams, but I do like Akers.
By the way, Higbee has Seattle week 1. I kind of like it. If you knew Seattle last year this is a tight end conversation, not a running back show. I'm sorry. Sky, before we jump into number 3, Jamie, we love you, man. One of my guys as well. Cam Akers or Dobbins? Everyone knows which direction I'm going to go, but what's your thoughts about this scenario at ADP?
Yeah, I've got Dobbins 2 spots ahead. I got Dobbins, James Cook, Cam Akers. And really with Dobbins, I think Dobbins and Cam Akers are similar running backs. Neither one of them is going to be heavy in the pass game for their offenses, I don't think. Maybe 30 catches, but they have touchdown upside in that offense, and they're going to get a lot in between the 20s. I have Dobbins a little bit higher because we've seen it more consistently when he's healthy, and also in that offense. I just think the Ravens offense will be significantly better than the Rams this year overall.
All right, let's jump down to number 3, another my guy. And we could split this one, Sky, because we both love Joe Mixon. Currently, I have him at rank 24. His ADP is 37. But this is your my guy for this season. So tell us why Joe Mixon has to be on your fantasy team in 2023.
Yeah, when I did my alternate, when you just asked me for my honorable mentions, I said that I wasn't going to go high with my honorable mentions on purpose. I knew you would. I went with some lower names. But as far as my guy, this is my highest ranked my guy. I have him in RB8 right now. Consensus has him at RB12. We're splitting hairs a little bit at the end, but I think there's a lot of fade talk in the industry in general for Joe Mixon. And I get it. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, like pass friendly offense, whatever. But Samaje Perine's gone and they have rookies behind him, and they might have a splash player here and there, but unless Mixon's hurt or tired, I don't see him coming off the field. He's a 3-down back. Last year, he had basically 2 seasons. The first half where their offensive line was in shambles, Jamar Chase was not hitting on all cylinders, and the offense wasn't flowing. He had 3 total touchdowns over the first 8 weeks. After that, in week 9, he had 55 PPR fantasy points, right? 5 touchdowns, 200-plus total yards. From week 9 on, Joe Mixon he was the RB6, and he was ahead of Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley for the rest of the season in the back half. He was also the 2nd highest graded running back by Pro Football Focus. We love that. And he missed 12 games as well. He was still the RB12. So playing in 14 games instead of 17, he was the RB12. Right now, he's ranked at the RB12. So I feel like people are ranking him around like closer to his floor than his ceiling. I think I've got him closer to his ceiling. Do I think he's top 5? Probably not, because I just don't think he gets the pass work. However, last year he had a season high or career high in receptions as well. So I like Joe Mixon a lot. I think the offense is going to be great. The offensive line, Bob, which I know you love, is 17th preseason. That's up 11 steps from last year by Pro Football Focus. That's massive. We expected a huge jump from this team last year. They all got hurt in preseason and the first couple of games, and it went to snuff until the second half. So I like Joe Mixon right now. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, I think I'm getting a discount. Now, we're only talking maybe 6 to 8 picks, but instead of, the middle of the third round, front of the third round, I'm willing to take him maybe on the turn in the back half of the second round if I don't have one of my other top running backs. So I'm all in on Joe Mixon once again, and I will take Joe Mixon over Breece Hall, Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, which I know everybody loves. I'm fading Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor as well. So I'm all in on on Joe Mixon. I know you are too.
Oh, baby, I am. And here's another thing, too, I want to talk about that's really important. Now, Lidorfitz jumps back in the comments and talks about the running back dead zone, hammering guys like Akers, J.K. Dobbins, James Cook, etc. at ADP. Now, this is important to remember. If you actually look at Fantasy Football Calculator, like running backs, a similar ADP, so like the RB20, for example, the RB25 are going like a half a round, almost to a full round later than they were a year ago. So you're actually getting a discount now because there's a lot of trends where wide receivers are getting pushed up. There's more quarterbacks now going early because people want the guys like Burrow, Fields, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, and then you have guys like Andrews, TJ Hockenson. So running backs are slipping a half a round to a full round now. So that RB dead zone might not be as dead as when you get to like the 4th, 5th round this year. So that is a great point. I do like that.
I'll add one more to that, Bob, before we proceed. I think it pushes back even further, if I'm being honest. Now, this is my personal opinion, but the RB dead zone starts for me at maybe like RB 24, 25, right? That's Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon. Those are running backs with either committees or we're not sure what they're going to give us. But that's in the 6th round. It used to be the 4th round, right? 4th round running backs right now are Jahmyr Gibbs, who I love, Breece Hall, who should be fine, Aaron Jones, who I think is underrated right now, Kenneth Walker, who I know you love, Miles Sanders, I don't love him, but he could have a big opportunity, J.K. Dobbins, Alexander Mattison, the show goes on. So I think it's even fading even more, man. So maybe we're capitalizing now on the industry fade where we can stay up on that.
Yep, absolutely. For Mixon, really quick before I get into number 2, last season he was obviously 17.1 PPR points per game. It was the RB6. 2.3 fantasy points more than the RB12. However, he did have that one monster game where he had 55 fantasy points. But if you just look at the other 12 games where he averaged 50% of the snaps last year, he averaged 14.6 PPR points per game. That would have been RB13. So kind of where we are kind of projecting him right now, early 3rd round pick. And then they added Orlando Brown to solidify left tackle, and they lost Samaje Perine. So if you just look at the games where Perine was less featured last year, he averaged 15.7 PPR points per game. That would have been RB9. So this guy's locked into low-end RB1 numbers, and you could get him consistently at the 3-4 turn. I love every second of that. Speaking of Kenneth Walker, Sky, look at you. Like, I feel like we're in a volleyball court. You just set me, and I'm going to spike it down now.
Bump, set, spike, Bob. Bump, set, every second. Spike.
Kenneth Walker, for me, is probably my biggest flag play in the earlier rounds based on ADP and positional running back rankings. So it just starts, first of all, number 1 player profiler calls him the LaDainian Tomlinson. That's his player comp, okay? Comes out last year. Obviously Seattle in history has been very lenient towards veterans, and it hasn't just been with Kenneth Walker last year. If you look at 2018, when they drafted Rashad Penny in the 1st round, they gave Chris Carson 240 carries that year. Then fast forward. Bam, there it is. Fast forward. I can't say it for some reason. Last season, if you look at the early season, Rashad Penny just can't stay healthy. But the first 4 weeks, he was out carrying Kenneth Walker 12-3 on average, weeks 1 through 4 before his week 5 injury. And then Kenneth Walker took over, okay? So then if you look at Kenneth Walker, 11 games played last year where he played 50% of the snaps. He averaged 16.9 PPR points per game. That would have been RB7 last year. This offense returns 4 or 5 starters on the offensive line. And by the way, 2 of those starters last year were rookies at tackle. Okay? Yeah. So then on top of that, they added a JSN onto the roster, which is only going to make the offense more potent, put him in more scoring positions as well. And so they added a center too. Evan Brown, who was from this Detroit Lions, was the PFF number 20 center just 2 years ago. So I just love the line. I love the offense. And I just think that they're going to invest in Kenneth Walker. I think a lot of people forget they lost Rashad Penny and Travis Homer. So this offense as a whole, this team as a whole, they lost all their running back depth. So they probably prioritized the position. Plus, I think they want to have a 3-down back to back up their 3-down back. So that's why I think they keep investing in these players who they know if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, they know Zach Cabernet can be a 3-down player for them, and they don't have to change up their offense, mix and matching DJ Dallas, Travis Homer. I like that foundation. So I'm all in on Kenneth Walker this year. Sky, your thoughts about Walker?
Yeah, I like it. And Bob, I was just digging up here from weeks 5 when he really started getting a serious workload. He was RB 11 the rest of the season there. His totals roughly 15. This is PPR fantasy points: 15, 19, 29, 12, 28, 13, 17. He had a dud 4. He missed week 14, 11, 14, 15, 13, averaging 16 points per game. Love that from your running back. And again, you're getting a little bit of a discount on him. It is a bit weird there. I'm not as bullish only because I don't trust Pete Carroll. Just years and years and years of, setting and forgetting Marshawn Lynch is just not the case anymore with Seattle. I do love this kid's talent. And I think it was, last year we talked about, if Breece Hall wasn't in this draft, Kenneth Walker would have been the far and away number 1 pick. And people are saying it this year. If Bijan Robinson wasn't in this draft class, Jahmyr Gibbs is far and away the best next running back. So Kenneth Walker's legit. I just am a little bit concerned about how they do things over there. I don't think Geno Smith is going to return to what he was last year. I think he, resorts back into a pumpkin this year. But if he doesn't, they're high flying, and a defense can't crowd the box like they're used to in Seattle. That's going to open lanes all day long. So I might get burned by not drafting Kenneth Walker much because I'm just not right now with other guys around him. But Bobby, bring up great picks. I don't dislike the player at all. I just am a little bit fuzzy about the situation. So I'm fading him just a little bit.
Just to push back a little bit, I will say that it was Chris Carson's backfield for multiple seasons after Marshawn Lynch. It wasn't like Lynch.
That's true.
Since then, it's been all
over.
Well, I
mean,
he had 278 carries.
Michael, of course.
Oh, there was a time where I fell for that. You won me back. That was nice. I like that. All right, quickly talk about JB talks in really quick. Montgomery over Walker ADP. You're out of your mind. I still love you though. Hubbard over Sanders at ADP. That's interesting. So Miles Sanders is someone we're not talking about today. He does seem like he has the early lead for every down work. I'm not all in on Sanders or all out. I kind of have him right at ADP. Sky, what's your thoughts about Sanders?
Man, I've been fading Sanders for a couple of years. I mean, I think he's fine, and I think he'll be fine as a starter. I'm worried about this offense, first of all. I just don't think Carolina brings much to the table, no matter who's playing with them, that isn't Christian McCaffrey. Chuba Hubbard, unfortunately, hasn't taken his opportunity and run with it, pun forced there. So I'm like not worried that he's going to steal the job from Miles Sanders. I just think what's going to happen is they're going to end up splitting backs. And even if it's like 60-40 Sanders isn't going to get enough to eat to be top 20, which he's getting drafted as right now. And Chuba Hubbard's not going to get enough to eat outside of maybe a big game or two to be a high-level handcuff that even if Sanders goes down, I don't know that I love the backup in Carolina over 30 other options, So like, I mean, yeah, at ADP, you're always looking for values. Like, sure, if you want to pass on Sanders and draft Chuba Hubbard last because nobody else is drafting him, do it. And maybe it pans out. I'm just fading Carolina pretty much entirely, to be honest with you.
I have him right in line with ADP. It just seems like Frank Wright over the last few years with the Indianapolis Colts. They did go lean all in on JT like the last 2 seasons, and JT had a monster year. I'll admit that. But prior to JT's big time breakout,
JT, bro.
I get that.
I mean, JT's an animal,
Nyheim Hines was involved a lot. You know what I mean? So there was that too. So I have him right at ADP. But there's a guy that we're going to talk about right now who's both our guy that we love. It's Alvin Kamara, who I would take over Miles Sanders, who's going later than Miles Sanders. I currently have him at ranked 45th overall. ADP has him all the way down at 71. And Sky, you're saying he's one of my guys as well. So tell us why you're all in on Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara has been my guy since he came into the league. I'm 100% biased. So I want to tell everybody, take this with a grain of sugar because I happened to draft Alvin Kamara on accident as the 3rd running back in New Orleans when he was Mark Ingram and Adrian Peterson's backup as a rookie. They both get hurt. Peterson gets shipped out. Alvin Kamara is a top 10 running back as a rookie the rest of the season. Won me my league of record. I'm very excited about that. Went undefeated. After that, he became the Alvin Kamara we know, and we knew it was the truth. He's only missing 3 games, not 6. And I know we don't want to draft guys that we know aren't going to play. But we said this about Nuke Hopkins constantly all summer, Bob, and we didn't bring it up with Alvin Kamara because we didn't know what his time off was going to be forever, right? So we're like, oh, you and I were doing mock drafts all summer, and we were getting Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara back-to-back in the 8th and 9th rounds. We're like, obviously, this isn't going to stick. But Alvin Kamara, folks, as of this show, and hope, knock on wood, he's not injured. He's suspended. He's out there playing right now and getting the camaraderie with the new squad, with Derrick Carr, what have you. I talk a lot of mess about Josh Jacobs. I just don't believe in the player, whatever. But Derrick Carr is not a schlep quarterback. He's not going to make, I think, the mistakes that Jameis is willing to make. He's not going to force the ball as much either, but they're going to play a more compact offense, and I think that helps Alvin Kamara. Also, Bob, quick side tangent, we're talking Saints. Did you happen to catch the one-handed grab for a touchdown by the one and only Hall of Famer Jimmy Graham last night in the preseason? Absolutely fantastic. Anyway, we're bringing it back. I think Alvin Kamara is going to be fine. Are the days of him getting 80 receptions, 81 receptions 3 years in a row, is that going to happen anymore? Most likely not. I'm not expecting that at all. But if he gets 50, right, in his 14 games that he comes back, we know they use him during the goal line. We all remember Christmas Day, 6 touchdowns. Overall, the talent and the opportunity you're getting in the 6th, 7th round that he's getting drafted is not even close. He's being drafted there because he's missing 3 games. We all know that. You have to bake that in. That's going to happen. You're not going to play him for the first month of the season. But when he comes back in week 4, 5, 6, he knocks the rust off. I think he's going to be gangbusters. And I'm not worried about anybody else on his team challenging him for touches outside of giving him a breather. So I just feel like people are forgetting about Alvin Kamara and how great he can be. I know this isn't the Drew Brees offense. I understand that. It's also not the Andy Dalton offense. So I think everything kind of regresses back a little bit better, and I think he's going to be just fine this year. Last year, career lows across the board. I think he bumps those back up. Let's give him 60-something receptions, probably, 10-plus touchdowns. That's a modest mark in the 6th round, and he's got massive weekly upside, as we know. So just want to make sure people keep Alvin Kamara on their radar. You do have to draft and get Kendre Miller or whoever you want as the backup for the first couple of weeks, Jamal Williams, whatever. But Alvin Kamara is going to be the guy once he's able to play.
So with Kamara, I think Derek Carr really kind of is an underrated addition for him because surprisingly, when I did my analysis earlier this offseason where I talk about, I'll go check it out at rouseball.com. A really fun article was running backs, wins and losses, points per game in those. So I talk about, which running backs are impacted. And everyone, when I went into this analysis, I thought Alvin Kamara would be one of those guys who was just as good in wins as he was in losses because he's got this great pass catching role. And it's honestly not the case. In the last 3 seasons, he averages 21 fantasy points in wins and 16 in losses. So that's 5 points per game difference. And Derek Carr immediately comes in. He's probably going to add maybe 2 to 3, 4 wins to this team just by being more competent than Andy Dalton. The other aspect of this that's kind of tangible is I'm going to talk a lot about the Raiders between 2018 and 2021. The reason why I say that is John Gruden was the head coach. He runs a West Coast scheme similar to what Pete Carmichael and the Saints run. That's why John Gruden came down and visited. I know he's like taboo now to talk about, granted he said some ridiculous things. We're going to leave that off there. But my point is he came down and actually talked with the Saints coaching staff to talk with Derek Carr about how they can merge what he already knows. So when I talk about the Raiders for those timeframes, that's why. Just want to give some background to why I'm saying these things. But from 2018 to 2021, the Raiders had 69 red zone carries per season on average. Last season, the Saints only had 51. Alvin Kamara has basically been the dominant person in the red zone. The reason why I bring up red zone is because everyone's going to say, well, Jamal Williams is going to be the goal line back. Okay, that's fine. Well, you still have roughly a 20% conversion rate on red zone carries for touchdowns. That's still pretty good. He had 25 red zone carries last year. If you just give him that bump and give him 50% of those, you're probably looking at closer to 6, 7, 8 touchdowns versus 2 that he had last year. So you're right there looking at probably another 0.2, maybe even 3 points more PPR points per game just by getting more red zone production for him with Derek Carr on that offense. So that's why I'm really all in on him. I know the first 3 weeks we saw with Hopkins last year, when you're coming off a suspension, it's a little different, right? He came in and he hit the ground running. And I know it worked out for him because Marquise Brown, for some reason, they threw a deep pass to him how weird is it, by the way, that Marquise Brown gets hurt on the last play of the game. And then the next week, Hopkins comes back. That's super strange. It's like they almost scripted it that way. Whatever. Arian Foster's probably thinking he knew. Anyway, but my point is,
Nice.
that's why I'm in on Kamara. I think the offense as a whole, he's just better in wins. They're going to be a more productive offense. Andy Dalton is a nice backup quarterback nowadays, but he just doesn't offer. He just is a absolute dud in the red zone, and I think they couldn't score touchdowns, and I think you see it in his numbers last year. So that's why I'm also all in on Kamara. As you can see from the screen, you don't even need to take Kamara at the 4 or 5 turn. You could take him probably later, but I'm flag planning. I'm saying I'd rather take him in the early 5th round. I'm not going to run the risk that he doesn't make it to the 6th round, back of the 6th. Yep. So that's why I'm flag playing there. Yep. Sky, any final thoughts before we end the show?
Yeah, I agree. I just want to piggyback a little bit because I think the obvious knock on Kamara is the 3 games. We all know that. Let's throw it out the door. It is what it is. Okay. So we're in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, whatever. But again, we're talking about Jamal Williams. Obviously, last year he had the best red zone efficiency in the league. Obviously, scored 19 touchdowns, whatever is insane. He won't do that again. If you look at Alvin Kamara specifically, you did a great job breaking down the Raiders with Derek Carr, and you did a great job breaking down the Saints in general with Alvin Kamara as a team. But Alvin Kamara personally last year scored 39 fantasy points inside the red zone only. So just from the 20 to the touchdown, he scored 39 fantasy points total all season. Flashback 2 years ago, 2021, 72 fantasy points. So he doubled that and then some, right? So I want us to remember that not only is Alvin Kamara he's not a big goal line back as body type, but they use him as a goal line back because they trust his awareness. His balance is insane. His vision is very good. More importantly, though, he had 5 receiving touchdowns. So if you're thinking, he only had 2, 3 rushing touchdowns. Okay. He's had 9 receiving touchdowns inside the red zone alone over the last 2 years. So those are metrics that there's probably 4 running backs off the top of my head in the NFL that can give you that upside when it matters in the red zone. Alvin Kamara is that guy. So you have to sit it out, figure out your roster, make plans. Otherwise, use a different flex, whatever. But having him come out, man, and having that in your holster when you come week 4, week 5, week 6, and all of a sudden you're bringing in a top 5 potential running back off your bench who's not injured, as we mentioned, it makes no sense to me that he's not being drafted earlier. I get we're missing 3 games, but it's 14 more games that season, assuming he stays healthy. So for me, it's Alvin Kamara, not a question. I agree with you, Bob. I'm reaching a round or 2 just to make sure I get him.
And this is a good point here from Jason. Honestly, just take Jamal Williams. I mean, I think Williams is an underrated player still. I think a lot of people, because Kendra Miller, because they took that draft capital on him, a lot of people are like, and Miller got some action just last weekend. I know he looks all right. He looks all right. He's been coming off kind of banged up knee injuries and stuff, but I think that Jamal Williams is probably your most logical player, probably going to give you like at least flex numbers the first 3 weeks before Kamara comes back. That's a plug and play flex player or RB2 to replace Kamara for the first 3 weeks, and you're good to go. Honestly, I'm buying. The Saints have a really good offensive line with Derek Carr. Now you got Juwan Johnson, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, freaking stud. I'm all in there. Let's one more before we go. We have a rate my team question, 10-team PPR. Sky, I'm kicking this over to you, my friend. He's got Herbert, which I think is Herbert, Justin Herbert. You got Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Pat Freiermuth, Ramondre Stevenson at the flex. What do you think of that starting lineup?
I mean, first of all, what are you concerned about? This is killer. I mean, Herbert, you guys know I'm a Herbert guy. Go Ducks. I'm okay. Okay, here's the only knock. Let me pick this apart just because we're supposed to find stuff and find cracks. Because it's full PPR, I don't love Chubb and Jacobs. That being said, Jacobs far and away had a career year last year in receptions. Nick Chubb with Kareem Hunt gone, who knows? Maybe he gets 60 receptions. If he gets 60 receptions, he's probably the RB1 overall. I'm just going to throw that out there. T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, both wide receiver 2s on their respective teams, but they play as wide receiver 1s for anybody else. So I love that pick. Pat Freiermuth, right? That's a late round tight end you're taking a shot on. Ramondre Stevenson as your flex is nice. I know Zeke's there. We're maybe a little bit worried about, him taking away touches. Bob and I talked about him last week, and my concern with Ramondre was I don't want him as my RB1 or even 2 because of Zeke. He's not. He's your RB3. He's a flex. You can move him around. In that particular case, I think that's a great opportunity. Now you have to also understand this team looks great, but in a 10-team league, most teams do look great. So I do think in particular, I love a lot of players on here. Herbert, of course, love Chubb, love T. Higgy and Devontae Smith as well. Not so hot on Jacobs, Freiermuth, or Stevenson, but I think as a unit, they're really great here. I wish this was a half PPR team. It'd be an easy A for me. I'll give it an A- just because I think there's a couple of questions.
So yeah, just really quick. I have Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Higgins, T. Higgins, and Ramondre Stevenson like all at the 2-3 turn. So the fact you have them all
perfect
like on the same team is that's you got me. You had me at hello, sir. Love every second of that. Before we wrap up too, we have a couple comments here, Sky. Honestly, want to know where the bananas are at today. We're like, the fruit can't get made. What's the deal here?
Totally valid question. And I apologize for letting the viewers down. The reality is I was out of town for about 4 days. And if you're like me and you buy organic fruit, the bad news about organic fruit is it's real, so it actually dies quicker. And I'm concerned about that. Jamie, tested my self-confidence a few weeks ago, mentioning my bananas had browned a bit behind me. So I try to keep them fresh, but if I'm going to keep them fresh enough to our viewer standards, I need to have them available at all times. I was out of town, crushed the bananas in a smoothie, head out. So Jamie, I'll have them ready for you next week, but I promise don't be
at this point, this is like an inside joke between Jamie and us two at this point. So everybody, thank you for staying on. You stay for the My Guys running backs, and you come back for the fruit analysis that we have in the backgrounds of our screens. But once again, this is our My Guys running back episode. If you're watching this video after the fact, please leave comments on what you think of our My Guys and leave your My Guys. We're all about interacting with our fans. And make sure you jump over to razzball.com and check out our 3-day free trial for our 2023 projections tool. We're super excited. Snap counts, targets, you name it. It's so in-depth. It's crazy. So go check it out on razzball.com. Yeah. Make sure you jump over to razzball.com and see all the great articles from this guy, all our great writers. We also have TikTok and IG. I am literally on TikTok just venting about players. It is, I don't even know if it's good content anymore. It is just madness over there, but it's fun. Make sure you go follow Sky Guasco. Sky, before we close the show, tell the people we got upcoming, what you just dropped on razzball.com.
Yes, so excited. I've been waiting all summer, crunching the numbers, and I'm just like hyper releasing right now. So go on to Razzball. Of course, you can find all of our writers. You can find on my click tab and find all my recent articles. I just dropped my must draft players. As you come into your drafts this week and next week is crunch time. Make sure to draft those 5 players. Plus, I have an honorable mention in there for you. On the other side, I'm more concerned about who I shouldn't draft. For me, it's who I don't want to draft, who are maybe a dud's going to fall short. I have my busts also already on the website. I'm working on some sleepers, some good buys, right? Some fades. And obviously Bob and I just did the My Guys. So keep track of that. Also, Bob, we are 2 weeks away from spending 3 hours from 7 a.m. Pacific to 10 a.m. Pacific, 3 hours of crunch time, start, sit questions, rapid fire, hundreds of questions with Razzball's top fantasy analysts. Make sure you check us out on the Sunday live show right here on YouTube. You can make sure to jump in line. We're going to have a Snapchat feature. You can jump the line if you'd like to donate to the show, get your question answered, get among your morning. We're going to be ready for you every single Sunday morning, 3 hours before kickoff, whatever your local time zone is. Bob and I are West Coasters. That's 7 a.m., Coach. We will be up there ready for you. So make sure you join us on the Sunday live shows coming up in 2 weeks when we kick off the season. Can't wait.
Couldn't said it better myself. I'm closing the show on that note. Make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. We are out of here, folks.